here at this extraordinary time. And I want to thank all those who are behind me today, but they're on the front lines of all these issues. That's why they're here. A father of a 16-year-old girl battling cancer, working extra shifts to pay for her treatment, detained in a Home Depot parking lot. A group of children in costumes participating in Halloween parade exposed to tear gas without warning. A 76-year-old U.S. citizen on his way home from Run Club pulled from his car by Border Patrol agents who broke 6 of his ribs and caused internal bleeding. The domestic violence courthouse, raided by ICE, women left, failing to get their orders of protection. A women's shelter, Bethany, where women are afraid to drop their kids off at daycare so they can go work because ICE is there. Food pantries were afraid, well, people are afraid to go pick up food, compounded by the shutdown where there's a very real chance where their SNAP benefits will end. The neighborhood of Little Village, just one of many with an economic downturn of 50% because people are afraid to go to restaurants. All of this just happened here in Chicago, and it's unacceptable. The people of Chicago know the truth about what is happening in our neighborhoods and across the city. Immigration enforcement is not targeting the worst of the worst. Instead, they're targeting immigrants with clean records who are working, caring for their families, and contributing to their communities. And they've detained dozens of U.S. citizens in Chicago and across the country. ICE and CBP have blatantly violated the rights of Chicagoans since they arrived in our city. They have racially profiled citizens, conducted warrantless arrests, caused car accidents, used excessive force leading to injuries and hospitalization. Earlier this month, ICE officers deployed tear gas directly outside of Funston Elementary School in Logan Square during the school day, forcing children at recess to take shelter. ICE officers have also detained several U.S. citizens, including aldermanic staff, a police commissioner, who were simply recording ICE operations. None of this is making us safe. In fact, it's actively making our communities less safe. That's why I am demanding the Department of Homeland Security Office of the Inspector General immediately launch an investigation into the dangerous, violent, and often illegal conduct of ICE and CBP in the Chicagoland area. The entire Illinois House Democratic delegation has joined me in this demand. While I am sure that the Trump administration will do everything in its power to prevent a fair and independent investigation, it is still imperative that we make official complaints about these actions. My colleagues and I are documenting every illegal incident we know of here in Chicago, and we put it in writing that all those that we want to be investigated. When we retake the House, we're going to launch every congressional investigation we have at our disposal. As a member of the House Appropriations Committee, I'm going to call for a significant reduction in funding for ICE and a restoration of the millions cut for programs that actually keep us safe. If this administration is going to use the levers of government to attack the innocent, then I'm going to make sure we use every lever of power we get to those who are guilty. I'd now like to introduce Commissioner Degnan.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bridget Degnan, and I'm proud to serve the residents of Cook County's 12th District, which covers parts of the north and northwest side of the city of Chicago. I want to thank Congressman Quigley for putting this press conference together and uplifting the voices of those impacted by ICE and calling for a much-needed investigation into ICE activity. And I am proud to stand with my other elected colleagues that are up here today. Across Cook County, we've seen time and time again ICE terrorizing our communities. Each day there's new footage taken by our residents of ICE, kidnapping people off the street, using tear gas and pepper balls as weaponry, and pointing guns at those exercising their First Amendment rights. Last week, ICE violently interrupted the annual Old Irving Park Halloween parade that's in my district tear gassing the street and leaving children and families traumatized by their cruelty. These disgusting tactics are now an everyday occasion, as ICE and CBP do Donald Trump's bidding. At all levels of government, we are fighting for an end to this war against our neighbors. This is not, and has never been, about law and order, safety, or justice. This is about Donald Trump and his Gestapo rounding up anyone who is not white. As our communities rally around our vulnerable neighbors, First Amendment rights have been infringed upon, and anyone who dares push back is now risking political prosecution. It's a disgrace that our justice system is being used to strangle the courageous voices standing up against an authoritarian, racist regime. I think it's important we call this what it is. It is not a government, it is a regime. The tactics we're seeing used by federal agents are not only unethical, but they are illegal, and in opposition to the principles this country was built on. There is a crisis of culture playing out each and every day in this country, and I refuse to let Donald Trump pit us against our neighbors, continuing this country down a path towards hatred. As elected officials, we must be leaders in this moment. I applaud everyone in our state and across our country working to pass legislation, sign executive orders, and fight against the federalization of the National Guard, and the terror that is being brought down upon us. We will not stop. We will not be silent. I want to thank everyone here today, and I would like to next invite up Commissioner Frank Aguilar.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Congressman Quigley. Frank Aguilar, 16th District, in the Western Suburbs. This is not the America that we love. And this is not the Republican Party that we elect in office. This is something else. As my colleague says, a regime. This is something that we defeated back in 1945. Terror, terrorizing our children, families, neighborhoods. This is not about targeting criminals. Law enforcement knows where the criminals are. They've been doing it for years. And I applaud them for doing it, but this is not about that. They have agents with swastikas as tattoos and SS. And if you don't see this as an obvious tactic, as the beginning of what we call fascism, then you agree with it. Bottom line, you agree with it. Because this is terrorizing our neighborhoods, terrorizing our families, and it has to stop. Thank you. En español. Esto no es el país que nosotros adoramos, Estados Unidos. Este no es el partido republicano que elegimos en el gobierno. Esa es otra cosa. Esa es otra cosa que nosotros, que este país acabó en el 1995. Es obvio que están terrorizando nuestra comunidad, a sus niños. Esto no es agarrar a los criminales. Las agencias de ley y policía saben dónde están y están haciendo un buen trabajo en agarrando gente que es peligrosa. Eso no es, se tratan, están arrestando niños, están arrestando gente inocente, ciudadanos, que producen nuestra comunidad. Hay agentes que tienen el tatuaje, el símbolo de los nazis. Y si no lo ven, entonces es parte de este problema. Thank you. I'd like to have my colleague from the First District, Tara Stamps.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I am Cook County Commissioner Tara Stamps from the First District. As Cook County Commissioner and as the daughter of the late freedom fighter Marion Stamps, I stand in solidarity with other elected officials to demand accountability, transparency, and humanity in how immigration enforcement has been carried out in our communities. I want to thank those leaders who have already done so much to try to protect our city, using whatever is in our toolkit to protect our city and our county, Mayor Brandon Johnson and President Tony Prepwinkle. Cook County has long been a sanctuary for those seeking safety and dignity, not the battlefield where families are torn apart and children are traumatized in the middle of the night. Unfortunately, as a Black woman in America, I and my ancestors have seen this behavior before. During the Civil Rights Movement, during the Jim Crow during slavery, when black children were ripped from their mother's arms during Jim Crow, when people were killed and hung for simply executing their First Amendment rights. So it's been a very difficult time being both black and American in this country. And so right now, this moment calls for radical solidarity as we, as Americans, face down a regime that is hell-bent on taking over our country. This moment calls for everyone to make a decision. There is a line being drawn in the sand, and the question is, whose side are you on? Silence will not keep us safe. So let me be clear. No government agency, I mean regime, federal, state, or local, should be allowed to operate above the law or outside of basic human decency. These actions violate our shared values of justice and due process, and they inflict generational trauma on black, brown, and immigrant families alike. And oftentimes we make this distinction of black and brown, but what I'm going to say to you, what I want to challenge you all to understand is this. These are all of our children. These are all of our neighbors. And what happens to one impacts what happens to the other. It is very difficult to believe or understand that children participating in a Halloween parade, being tear gassed as black and brown, is not going to impact their classmates who may be white. This is all of us. And so we have to begin to unify and practice what I'm saying is radical solidarity and stop hiding behind these imaginary lines. Cook County remains committed to protecting all residents regardless of status. We will continue to support policies and partnerships that ensure that our county resources are never used to enable such harm. Our focus must always be on safety through compassion, not fear, accountability, not abuse. Today is about standing up for people who cannot stand here for themselves. And as my mother taught me, when we see injustice, we don't whisper about it. We confront it together in love and in power. Aluda continua, the struggle continues. And now I would like to bring up, I lost my cheat sheet, Kevin Morrison.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Cook County Commissioner Kevin Morrison, and I represent the 15th District covering the northwest suburbs of Cook County. First, I would like to thank Congressman Quigley for leading this effort. I would also like to share my appreciation for the survivors, advocates, and my colleagues for being here and speaking truth in this moment. It should be clear to everyone that what we are witnessing from ICE under the Trump regime is not public safety, but lawless violence and political intimidation. Just this week, we have seen indictments on several elected officials and candidates for merely exercising their First Amendment rights. In my own district, ICE raided a small business in Elk Grove Village, harassing and detaining several workers, all with work permits. In Elgin, ICE detained 2 U.S. citizens without cause, all while Kristi Noem flew in for a social media photo op. And just this month, ICE finally threw to the ground and detained several teenagers in Hoffman Estates without cause, one an American citizen who was 19 years old and had to be taken away in an ambulance. This amounts to just a small fraction of the abusive, disgusting, and extrajudicial violence we are seeing from the Trump administration forced upon our communities. It is a deliberate and dehumanizing strategy of fear and mental strike terror in the hearts of our families and friends. However, in the face of this fear, we are not backing down. This is why I introduced and passed Cook County's resolution reaffirming due process rights for all Cook County residents. Because here, our constitutional rights are not optional, nor are they negotiable. So to everyone who fears for their safety, I will say loudly and clearly that Cook County stands with you. You deserve safety, dignity, and justice. We will not let your rights be trampled on, and we will not be silent. In the face of the Trump administration's unimaginable cruelty, we will keep fighting relentlessly until every family in our community can live free from fear and abuse from their government. Thank you again for having me here today, and with that, I would like to introduce, and the next up sheet is Alderwoman Cruz.
Good morning, buenos dias. I'm Alderwoman Ruth Cruz from the 30th Ward, and I stand here this morning with Congressman Quigley, other elected officials, and victims of federal misconduct. What we're seeing across our communities is unacceptable and inhumane. They're trying to feed this narrative about safety, about protecting our streets. But what we're seeing, it is fear, chaos, and cruelty. They're not detaining criminals. They're kidnapping the backbones of our community, which is landscapers who beautify our neighborhoods, construction workers building our homes, parents on their way to school, street vendors earning an honest living, people waiting for the bus on their way to work who are contributing to the economy. And also our communities are being tear gassed as kids are getting ready for Halloween parade. But also they're detaining our U.S. citizens who are exercising their constitutional rights. And because of that, they're trying to strip our rights. But we will continue to stand strong. And make no mistake, it's not gonna end with the immigrant community. The question is, who will be next? And that's why we gotta stand and we demand for dignity, we demand for justice, and we demand that the rights of every person be respected. But we also demand for due process for everyone, and we demand for accountability. We will not be silenced. We will not be broken. We stand together, and together we will prevail. Our message to our neighbors are simple. You're loved, you're not alone, we see you, we stand with you, and we would not let fear win in our city. I also want to take a moment to thank our Northwest Rapid Response Team. All of the volunteers for their time, they're putting in to protect our families and our communities. But also to our strong leaders like our Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, our State Senator Graciela Guzman, our Cook County Commissioner Jessica Vasquez, our State Representative Lindsay LaPointe, and of course to our staff members. Because of them, we do the work that we do. And the message is simple. We keep us safe, and I hope you all have a happy Halloween today. Thank you. Real quick in Spanish. Hoy estamos aquí reuniéndonos con el congresista Quigley y otros oficiales electos para decir y demandar que queremos justicia, exigimos dignidad, exigimos justicia, exigimos que se respeten los derechos de todas las personas, exigimos que el debido proceso para todos y exigimos que haya cuentas claras de todo lo que está pasando. Pero también para decirle que no nos callarán, que no nos rendiremos, que no nos hincaremos, que seguiremos juntos y unidos venceremos. Y para el mensaje para nuestra comunidad que está pasando por todo esto, quiero decirles que los queremos, no están solos, los vemos, los apoyamos y en medio de todo esto el miedo no ganará. Muchísimas gracias.
39th Ward Alderman Samantha Nugent.
Good morning and thank you. My name is Sam Nugent. I'm alderman in the 39th Ward of Chicago. In addition to being an alderman, I'm also a mother, I'm a lawyer, and I used to be the chief of staff at the Cook County Department of Emergency Management. Everything we're seeing right now offends every sensibility I have, of course, as the alderman, as a mother. As a lawyer, nothing we are seeing here is legal. It is a complete abuse of the law, and as the former chief of staff of the Cook County Department of Emergency Management, their whole job is to prepare for, protect against, respond to, recover, and mitigate from all disasters, whether man-made or natural. It never says in the motto of any of the emergency management organizations to create disasters, to create chaos, and that is what we're seeing right now. What we are witnessing in Chicago and in our neighborhoods and outside of our schools and in the middle of our daily lives is just heartbreaking and lawless. One of the most disturbing parts of this whole operation is the disregard of families and children. Chicago is a place of humanity. That means we prioritize due process. We respect the constitutional rights of all, and we treat each other with decency. The 39th Ward continues to address the very real humanitarian crisis facing our city by supporting families with coordination and compassion. In partnership with the city, community organizations, and our residents, I secured the former Marine Corps building in North Park as a shelter, ensuring we have a space to serve these families safely and responsibly as they go through the proper legal channels. We work to make sure migrant families in our ward have access to schools, healthcare, and legal resources, and neighbors stay informed every step of the way. ICE's recent operations undermine every bit of progress. They're creating fear, and they're stoking chaos, not safety. And let's be clear, their intent is to stoke chaos. Just last week, masked ICE officers were waiting outside the shelter to grab people on their way to work in our ward. This is not productive. This clearly just paralyzes our communities with fear and serves no one. Storming into public spaces, stealing parents from children, and acting like due process is a suggestion and not solve issues that we face. I'm calling for immediate transparency and accountability, and quite frankly, the usage of body-worn cameras. We need to know specifically who these raids are targeting, what warrants have been granted, and what safeguards are in place to protect children. I urge our partners at every level of government to stand up for the families we represent. It is our job to ensure that no child comes home to an empty house or is left waiting at school for someone who will not be there. They cannot and will not face this cruelty alone. The people of Chicago deserve better. Thank you.
My alderman, the alderman of the 44th Ward, Bennett Lawson.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you all. Thank you, Congressman, my congressman constituent, for putting this together today. 44th Ward has always been a place where people from every background, every country, and every walk of life have found a home. Our diversity, our compassion, our shared belief that everyone deserves to live with dignity and without fear make our community welcoming, authentic, and the place we know and love. But in the past week, that sense of safety was shattered. Families were forced to shelter in place as federal agents fired tear gas onto a residential street. Children were locked down in nearby schools, and neighbors who gathered to protest peacefully were met with violence. We know that these are not isolated incidents. Instead, they're just the latest examples of ICE's unlawful and undemocratic actions that are terrorizing our city. Chicago is a city that values civil rights, transparency, and community safety, not fear and intimidation. Immigrants are part of every family, every business, and every block of this city. They are our neighbors, our colleagues, our friends, and our family members. I want to lift up the neighbors that are here today from the 44th Ward, Bruce Turner, Leo Feller, and Greg Vaughn, who are standing up to protect our community along with thousands of others. I'm appalled by the federal government's tactics and the trauma they've inflicted on our residents. People have the right to walk their children to school, to go to work, and to call this city home without the threat of tear gas or unlawful detention. But I'm also not without hope. The response from my neighbors and all Chicagoans has been inspiring. I'm incredibly proud to serve as alderman for all my constituents who've raised their hand to support our immigrant community, from volunteering at school pickup and drop-offs to posting your rights signs and peacefully protesting throughout the city. This has been the Halloween week, and I've given out as many whistles as I have bags of candy to very willing adults who know that they have a role to play. I want to thank my fellow elected officials here and stand with you in calling for an immediate end to these unacceptable actions and a formal investigation into the numerous instances of dangerous, violent conduct by ICE. Chicago's greatest strength is our solidarity, radical solidarity, I believe we heard. We protect each other, we tell the truth about what's happening, and we use every lawful tool to defend due process and dignity. I want to end by reaffirming our message that every immigrant family, you are welcome here. You make our neighborhood stronger, and we stand with you. Thank you, and I wanted to pass along to 44th resident whose home was tear gas last week, Leo Feller.
Morning.
Alright.
My name is Leo Feller. I am a resident here in Chicago. I want to start by reading to you the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. The Fourth Amendment protects all of us, you and me, from unreasonable searches and seizures. It requires that warrants be based on probable cause and specify the place to be searched and the people or things to be seized. It ensures that law enforcement must have a warrant to conduct most searches. The Fourth Amendment aims to protect individuals like you and me from arbitrary government intrusion. Last Friday, on October 24th, at 11:50 a.m., two white, unmarked SUVs drove the wrong way at high speeds down a one-way residential street. Masked, armed men wearing military fatigues jumped out of their cars. They did not identify themselves. They did not show a warrant, even after they were asked to do so. They climbed over a 5-foot-tall, locked wrought iron gate onto my property. They chased construction workers who were on my property repairing windows and siding. They chased these workers toward the back of the building. These agents then climbed up onto a private balcony. They entered my garage, and from within my garage, they detained one of the construction workers. I had hired a large and reputable construction company to replace the windows and siding at a historic 3-flat building that I own and live in with my family here in Chicago. The company I hired then subcontracted to a team of construction workers to install the windows and siding. I personally did not hire the construction workers who were at my property. I did not know their legal status, but I knew they were Hispanic. I think many of you and many of the viewers who are watching this will have similar experiences as me. You might order something from DoorDash, or Instacart, or Uber Eats, or Amazon, and a delivery person who you did not hire will come onto your property and to deliver an item. Or you might have a gardener, or cleaning lady, or repair person come onto your property. Across the United States, these types of jobs are done disproportionately by Hispanic and Latino workers. So I have a question for all of you and for all of the viewers. Should the U.S. government be allowed to invade your property, to jump over a locked fence, to come onto your home, simply because they might observe someone who looks Hispanic or Latino and who might be an immigrant on your property? When I was describing the immigration raid that occurred at my home to friends and families, I got a lot of support, but I also got a few questions like, were the workers illegal immigrants? And that is not the question we should be asking. Since I assume most or all of you are not illegal immigrants, perhaps what's happening to immigrants is not as relevant to you. So let's focus on the other side of the issue. Should the U.S. government be allowed to jump over a locked gate, come onto your property, and onto your home without a warrant? Now this should matter to all of you, because while you might not be immigrants, while you might not be illegal immigrants, all of you have homes. And I presume all of you want to feel safe in your homes against unidentified, masked, armed men wearing military fatigues entering your home. This is essentially what happened to me at my home last Friday. U.S. immigration agents saw Hispanic construction workers and without a warrant, without any announcement, invaded my property to detain them. One worker was ultimately detained. That detention happened inside my garage, which means it happened on my private property at my home without a warrant. This was a violent raid. I was able to capture some parts of the raid on security cameras. And in that footage, you can hear many times how we asked a federal agent to show warrants, and they ignored us. I spent most of last weekend cleaning up blood at my property. Every now and then, I'll still be walking around and there will be a spot of blood I failed to clean up, and I will clean that up. The construction workers were injured during the raid. I'm not sure if they were injured because they were running through a construction site, or they were roughed up by the federal agents, or both. In one video, an agent who ran through the construction site says, quote, "You made me cut myself, and when I cut myself, I get mad." In another video, an agent is trying to pull one of the construction workers out of the second-story window, about 15 feet off the ground. This was a violent incident. I would love it if our representatives here today could identify these federal agents and obtain any body camera footage so we have a better sense of what happened. Fortunately, I have the security videos, which already give us a good sense of how violent this raid was. Earlier this week, I went to my police precinct to file a police report. The police report was going to be for trespassing, breaking and entering, burglary, battery and assault of a construction worker on my property, and kidnapping of one of the construction workers. The Chicago Police Department refused to take the police report. I later went to the Chicago Police Detective Bureau, and there they took a police report for criminal damage to property. But I later got a call from a sergeant saying they would not be able to continue with that police report because his higher-ups told him not to pursue it. I have a lot of respect and admiration for our Chicago Police Department, but I am concerned that our own Chicago police are afraid to help us. So who do we turn to protect us from violations of the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution? To our representatives here today, I greatly appreciate all the support you have given me already, but I need your help in getting a police report filed, because my view is that what occurred on my property, at my home, is a crime, and that crime needs to be investigated. So I am asking you to come with me to the police precinct after this press conference to help me get a police report filed. Let me close by saying that I know that some of us might be unsympathetic or maybe too far removed from what is happening to immigrants and to the targeting of Hispanic and Latino residents in Chicago. But I hope all of us agree that our homes are our personal spaces and that we have a constitutional framework and a system of government that is meant to protect us within our property and within our homes. What happened to me, a privileged, white, male, U.S. citizen, in my home could happen to any of you. Let me say this again in a different way. Unless we take action to prevent the type of immigration raid that occurred in my home, where unidentified, masked, armed federal agents jumped over a locked gate onto my property and climbed onto a private balcony and entered my garage to detain a construction worker, all without identifying themselves or showing a warrant, then something like this can happen again. And next time, it might be your home. Thank you.
Vanessa Avalos is the owner of Luna y Cielo, a children's play place where tear gas was deployed by ICE.
Good morning, buenos dias. My name is Vanessa Aguirre Avalos. That's VANESSA-AGUIRRE-AVALOS. I'm the owner of Luna y Cielo Play Cafe in Logan Square, Chicago's first play cafe dedicated to celebrating the Latino culture and the Spanish language. Today I'm here not just as a business owner, but as a mother, a neighbor, and a proud member of several communities. My business has suffered deeply because our families are too afraid to go out. I am behind on rent and may soon have to close my business. A space built to keep our culture and our language and our children's joy alive. And just to piggyback off the previous speaker, everyone is an immigrant. At some point, every person in this room has had a grandparent, a great-grandparent that has come to this land. On October 3rd, ICE terrorized Logan Square, the community that I grew up in, and the community that I came back to build my business in. The community where children come every day to learn Spanish and to connect to their roots. That day, ICE was being chased out of our neighborhood by brave residents. Two courageous individuals used their motorcycle and a scooter to block ICE from advancing. In retaliation, ICE agents fired pepper gas between Funston Elementary and my play cafe. Within minutes, the street was filled with smoke, fear, and chaos. Inside Luna y Cielo, children and caregivers were terrified. One little girl who has been coming to my space since she was 9 months old and is now 3. Looked out the window, saw the crowds forming, and the police everywhere, and panicked. When her mom arrived to pick her up, she clung tightly to her arms and asked, "Mommy, what happened?" Now, whenever she sees police lights, she freezes, reliving that trauma from October 3rd. We have nannies, mothers, and families who are U.S. citizens, too scared to walk or drive to Luna y Cielo. I have to coordinate bike and walking patrols to help families get home safely. Thank you. Our days are filled with a constant hum of Black Hawk helicopters circling above, searching for people to abduct. Just the other night, my own son crawled into bed with my husband and I, trembling after hearing helicopters overhead for 10 minutes long. I'm deeply worried about the trauma this is causing our children. And things are only going to get worse with the loss of SNAP benefits, growing food insecurity, and children struggling to learn on empty stomachs. Families are stretched thin, and our food pantries will become even more overwhelmed. Yet even in the midst of all of this pain, our community continues to rise. We are organizing food drives, clothing swaps, and mutual aid efforts to care for one another, refusing to let capitalism or fear define us. But we cannot do this alone. So I ask, what are our elected officials doing to protect us? We need more immediate action. 1, unmask ICE, make their operations and collaborations transparent. 2, protect our children. No child should live in fear that their parents won't be home when they come back from school or go hungry when the government has billions of dollars to send to Argentina to build a ballroom or to bail out corporations who don't pay enough taxes. And 3, stop sending Illinois state tax dollars to the federal government that funds these violent acts against our own residents. When will enough be enough? When will we as a people stand together and strike until our basic human rights are met? We need more than just weekend protest. We need to disrupt the system. Mayor Johnson called for a general strike, and we must act now. Please, Mr. Johnson, be the person to take charge. We are ready. I'll close with this. Get out and meet your neighbors. Find out what your community needs. Create a parent patrol at your local school, even if you don't have kids. And then use your privilege. Offer to get groceries for someone who can't. Print out emergency family plan from the City of Chicago's website and share it with vulnerable families. Donate to mutual aid or join your local rapid response teams. We keep each other safe, and we are the safety net. And together we will keep our children and our great city alive. Thank you.
Vanessa and all our constituents for their service and their courage and what they're doing. And to reinforce one of the things she said, my ancestors came here during the potato famine, but they went to Canada first, and they came across the border illegally and undocumented. So she's factually correct in everything that she has said. And I want to bring forward Greg Vaughn, a Greeley Elementary parent and leader of Greeley's walking school bus, to answer the question we are asking today: how are we doing in Chicago?
Thanks, Congressman. So how are we doing at school, at our school, in our community? You know, there's lots of fear, obviously, especially parents. I think we're more explicitly conscious of what's going on in our community. We have parents who have been political prisoners in Venezuela, who have fled gangs in Mexico. So for them, they know the stakes. Deportation could mean death. So there's a lot of stress for parents, lots of sleepless nights and nightmares, but kids feel this too. They sense the tension, they sense the worry. They freak out when they see law enforcement, when they hear helicopters circling overhead, which has been happening a lot lately. Sometimes they bicker more amongst themselves. I've had kids ask me, what will happen if my mom disappears tomorrow, or one of my classmates disappears, or if I disappear? And we're feeling this fear regardless of migratory status, because these federal agents, they're not asking questions. They're just snatching people off the street based on how we look or how they think we look. So we've got asylum seekers, people who are legally here, they've gone through a process, they've presented themselves before the government, they have work permits, but they're worried with reason that could be snatched away at a moment's notice. We've got green card holders that fear having their status somehow revoked. Even U.S. citizens here in Chicago are getting assaulted by federal agents or swept up into unmarked SUVs. So certainly there's a lot of fear. Oddly enough, though, we're also feeling maybe inspired. We draw strength from this adversity. and especially in terms of taking care of one another, looking out for each other. Right now, we all have to kind of be sheepdogs. We're protecting our community, of course, within the law, the bounds of the law, peacefully. And so it's in that sense that our school set up a walking school bus and a neighborhood patrol whereby parents, staff, and community members, those of us who feel maybe less personally at risk, we can accompany parents and students who feel at risk so that they can get to and from school safely. And I guess I'll close by saying that for anybody who's seeing all this unfold from outside of Chicago, and maybe who doesn't like what they're seeing, if you're a person who feels like you stand up for what's right, you speak out against injustice or tyranny, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or whatever, I encourage folks to reach out to their elected officials, talk to your friends and family. You know, we're doing what we can here in Chicago, but we need Americans throughout the country to lift up their voices and say, hey, this isn't the country that I recognize. This isn't what my forefathers fought and died for. These aren't the values that, you know, we're not doing honor to our founding principles. Right now we've got masked federal agents abducting people off the street, conducting warrantless searches, and I don't think that this is the vision that any of us have for our country.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks to all the electeds behind me and all our speakers. I also want to thank President Quigley. She couldn't be here, but we want to thank so much the county for hosting us. Just my own experience in the walking school bus, my staffer Victoria and I walked a young lady through this program last week, and 8 years old, and she was happy to be walking to school, and she talked about what she'd like and talked about her family. She'd like to get some dogs. Very human stories in the midst of actual terror, and it brings us all to the forefront. So I also want to thank my staff, but the staff of everybody behind me and all those across the city. They have faced some of this abuse, but they're working extraordinary hours under great stress to try to help as much as possible during a government shutdown. So I want to thank them, and if there are any questions, we are all available. Yes?
Should Democrats start independently tracking DHS agent violations to prosecute under the next Democratic presidential administration?
Well, that's why I asked for the investigation, so some of this can begin in the documentation process. It's why we're here, it's why we're working. All my colleagues, Democratic colleagues in the Illinois delegation signed on to this. So there's a process to do this. We're not being helped by my Republican colleagues, obviously the administration, but when the gavel switch, we will have documented as much as possible, again, with the help of the city of Chicago, the county, the state, and all the elected officials here to have that information available, ready, and the witnesses, that we have their contacts so we don't have to go looking for them in a year and 3 months.
What else could city leadership, whether through the law department or Chicago police or mayor's office, do to stand up to Trump?
Look, I believe the electeds I have seen are doing what they can. I'm gonna let one of the aldermen speak to anything else the city of Chicago can do.
Well, there is a lot of different things that we can do within our scope. And one of the things is, recently Mayor Brandon Johnson has the ordinance where ICE cannot use city facility, whether parking lots or staging. And that has helped us in some parts of the area. I was able to witness that in one part of the northwest side where they were asked to leave their parking lot because it's a city parking lot, and they went on with their day, they went on somewhere else. But those are the things that we're doing. Also, when it comes to our office, we're Deputy Mayor for Immigration and Refugee, Beatriz Ponce de Leon, what the outreach is doing with other coalitions like ICER and Resurrection Project when it comes to, again, know your rights and other information and how to prepare a family plan. I think now we have done such a great job of like knowing everybody what is on your rights. And the focus is going into how do we help prepare those for a family plan. What about if some parent, a mother gets detained, what happens with those children? So again, the focus is shifting to that.
I know there's been reports of detainments at the O'Hare taxi staging area. I was just wondering, is that city property, and is there anything electeds can do to address that situation?
That has been addressed, I know that has been addressed to, our deputy mayor as well, regarding the issue. I cannot speak on what has happened after that, but that is something that I personally also reached out to, Beatriz Ponce de Leon regarding some of the reports that were coming in through our chat, but I do not have an answer what happened after that.
So our reporting shows that last night, federal agents actually tasered a man at this parking lot that is city property. Is there anything Congress or city leadership can do about that, given that these executive orders have been signed and they're violating them?
Look, the federal government's in violation of consent decrees and indiscriminate use of tear gas, bringing warrantless arrests or bringing blank search warrants. I was a criminal defense attorney for 10 years. The notion that someone can come to a scene with a blank search warrant is just an extraordinary violation of the Constitution. So look, we have our votes and our voices. Today is part of using our voices, but we need to continue to do that as much as possible. Our votes are stymied to an extent that this is a government shutdown brought about by a president who said we're not going to negotiate. So it is bringing this to the attention of working with our friends like the ACLU and the lawsuits there that are taking place. I wish the minority in the House could bring lawsuits, but under the House rules, only the Speaker can. So we're on amicus briefs, and again, documenting everything we possibly can, appealing to the humanity and I think the intelligence of the American public as to what's taking place, why all this matters. Yes.
Congressman, very quickly, Governor Pritzker last week mustered up the Illinois Accountability Commission to document some of the same sort of things that you and your colleagues are documenting. What dialogue, if any, have you had with the governor and his staff about what they're doing, and do you intend to share information between your body and that one?
Look, the governor has been very forthcoming and cooperative with all of our staffs. And this is a federal team effort, federalism team effort. Now more than ever, there needs to be coordination and communication between the state, our federal lawmakers, and the community commissioners, alders, and just everyone else there. This has never happened before. There's a reason after the Civil War we passed a law, Posse Comitatus, that says you can't use federal troops against civilians. In our wildest dreams did we think in 2025 the President of the United States would say to a group of U.S. generals that U.S. cities should be used as a training ground for the military to go after the enemy from within. The bigger part of this picture is this is a president who has slid from simple autocracy to being a tyrant, right? When you talk about that to folks, they sometimes think that's hyperbole. What else do you need to see? That's why we're bringing the residents who are the front lines of this, the businesses who have been in the front lines of this, and the electeds who are responding in such an extraordinary way to the forefront. This is a tyrant. And when a tyrant tells you he's going to do something, you maybe want to pay attention, right? What else has he said he's going to do, right? He's going to call on the Insurrection Act. And then all bets are off, folks. So what else can we do? Stand up to the tyrant at every chance you can possibly get. In the first term here, I was part of the impeachment investigation. I was in the room on January 6th. Did I imagine that the orange guy would be back in charge? Absolutely no way. But here we are, and now's the time to stand up. 90 years ago, they wrote a book, It Can't Happen Here. It can't happen here, and we need to be involved, work with our citizens in the courts, and this is the toughest fight we're gonna face, but we have to be there.
This might be a question maybe for one of the aldermen. Time and time again, Mayor Johnson has said that Chicago police will not be working alongside ICE or CBP But in the case of Mr. Feller, you know, he has a legitimate complaint that something has happened on his property and he's not being allowed to file a police report. Is there anything that can be done about that, or is there a reason why those reports can't go through?
So I think those are good questions and the ones that we need to follow up on. We're gonna do that as actually after we leave here, so that I have an understanding of why they were pulled out in the first place. I think, if you pay attention to the city budget hearings, among everything else happening, there's a lot of questions about how our city is responding to the ICE raids. We asked aviation about the parking lots and didn't maybe get a full answer. Police are up next week. And so I think you're gonna get a lot of questions about exactly what the procedure should be. I know that, in some ways they're in a tough spot and that they have to keep everyone safe. But I think a better understanding of what their role should be would be helpful for everyone here. So thank you for that.
To my knowledge, there is no case law about this, but there should be, and I suspect there will be. And I think the city of Chicago, a crime is a crime, no matter who commits the crime. No one and no government is above the law. So I think the city of Chicago should allow these police reports to be filed, and they should prosecute the guilty. It is compounded with the fact that these are masked ICE agents without the numbers. We've seen reports and heard from people that the numbers have been smudged, or they're ineligible, or they're just not there. Just understand what that means. Police are trained to identify themselves. So what's the take in this climate? Rogue bands of thugs going out there and simply kidnapping people. That's why this is so important. That's why the city of Chicago needs to allow these police reports to go forward and to prosecute those who have committed crimes. Probably time for one more. That always gets the last one.
Congressman, do you support Chicago bringing back a head tax, which the mayor says is more urgent than ever under Trump?
Topic for a different day, but I don't want to take the welcome mat away and tell folks you're not welcome to Chicago. I can't think of a better way to do that and to tell folks you're not welcome than to impose a head tax on those who are supplying labor to the city of Chicago. So with all due respect, it's a bad idea. I thank you all for being here.